We can now bring in France 24's Wassim Nasr. Wassim, good to see you. What is the situation on the ground exactly, and who's fighting here?
Actually, the situation is evolving very, very fast. And I'm going to look at a map to see the situation as we speak. And here we put the dots on the most important battles that occurred in the last days, and the maximum push of Islamist rebel forces towards the town of Hama that we see south of the map, knowing that they even advanced a little bit more in the latest hours. And we know today that the most important fighting group is Hay'at Tahrir al-Sham, meaning an Islamist rebel group from Idlib, who made the biggest part of the attack and took over Aleppo, the town. But also we have rebels that came down from the north, from the light green area. Those are rebels that are formed, armed, and aided by Turkey, who entered the battle on the third day of the battle, and who went around Aleppo from the east. The Syrian army tried to put up a fight without any success, and the red dot, the red arrow that we see is actually the Kurdish forces that were present in the town of Aleppo under the regime and that accepted to leave Aleppo towards Kurdish areas that we see in yellow.
What to you has been interesting of what we've seen from Aleppo over the past few days?
Well, the most interesting part, as we said, is actually HTS, an Islamist rebel party, giving the possibility to Kurdish forces to leave the town of Aleppo and other areas without a fight, knowing that Kurdish forces entered the Aleppo airport when the army left it, and they left for HTS too, meaning that there are deconfliction negotiations and talks between HTS, Islamist rebels, and Kurdish forces. The hardest part for HTS now is to secure the retreat of those forces, and we have footage of that, retreating Kurdish forces like fighters and their families. At the beginning, we are going to see them leaving Aleppo. Here it is, the town of Aleppo. And in a few seconds, we'll see a footage that we got like a few minutes ago. And here it is. And it confirms that HTS allows Kurdish fighters to leave with their weapons, with their ammunition, with their weapons. Here we see them. But the hardest part for HTS will be to get them through the Syrian National Army controlled areas, meaning the rebels that we talked about that came down from the light green area that are backed by Turkey and who maybe they will choose to put up a fight. So this is a challenge for HTS to put through those Kurdish fighters. Another interesting thing that we saw, here we see there are raids by Russia on Aleppo, but also raids on camps in Idlib. And this is not unusual, but the unusual thing is that the HTS political bureau issued a statement addressing Russia in Russian, telling the Russians to stop backing Assad despite those bombings, and telling them that we can see you as partners in the future, meaning it's like the Taliban model. They want to have relations with everyone, even with their foes. And another interesting part also is the message that was addressed by Abu Mohammad, al-Julani, the head of HTS, to his fighters at the beginning of the fight, telling them you leave civilians alone, you don't get into homes, meaning in Aleppo. And also that the person that addressed the minorities, who's in charge, Bashir al-Ali, in charge for HTS for minorities, who addressed the Christians, and specifically told them, stay in Aleppo, you won't be harmed. So this messaging is interesting, and the latest message that occurred in this regard was addressed to Kurds and telling them, you are part of the Syrian society, we want your diversity to stay in the regions under our control. So this is very interesting for an Islamist rebel group who a few years back was actually the offshoot of al-Qaeda. So it shows us that there's a real shift that was made by Mohammed al-Julani away from global jihad and from groups like Islamic State and Al-Qaeda that he's fighting actually. You know, HTS killed the fourth caliph of the Islamic State in Idlib, and HTS is putting under very hard pressure Al-Qaeda offshoots, and foreign fighters who maybe, who surely fought this battle too, are under tight control of HTS, and sometimes with coordination with foreign powers.
So what has HTS and Julani achieved since last Wednesday?
Well, beyond the military achievement itself and the tripling of the area of control of the rebels, Mohammad al-Julani actually succeeded in reshuffling the cards of the political situation in Syria that were frozen since like 5 years. Because regarding the displaced issue that is in Idlib, more than 4 million that were present in Idlib, they were putting a lot of pressure on HTS administration in order to go back to their towns. Because people who put up the fight and are putting up the fight actually now are people trying to get back their homes. And Ma'arat Nu'man and all those areas, meaning the kid that left with his parents like 8 years ago, he's like 18 years today, and he is the one putting up the fight mostly. So they were putting a huge pressure on the administration of HTS, meaning demonstration and contesting Julani. So he answers this call. On another hand, those refugees that are in Idlib and maybe in Turkey and other areas in the region will go back to their homes through this military achievement by HTS and the rebels. And at the same time, he showed that Assad is totally, or the President Assad is totally reliant on Hezbollah and Shia militias, because the military momentum was made because Israel hit very hard Shia militias and Hezbollah in Syria. And the day that a truce was signed in Lebanon, Julani decided to attack because he knew that if he waited a little bit more longer, the opportunity will go away. So he did it. And on the other hand, he shows that Assad is totally reliant on the Iranians, meaning that Assad cannot bargain anymore his splitting or his shift away from Iran. Because he shows the international community that he's depending on them. And he shows also that Assad cannot be around a negotiation table in the area on the aftermath, because as you know, Assad was welcomed in Saudi Arabia weeks ago, that UAE is working to put back Assad on the regional scene, that to one end, in order to find peace in the region. And by Julani, by doing this, shows that Assad is not relevant in the new equilibrium of the region. And we will show, and we will end with this, some footage that I made in the Idlib area in Atmi, the camp of Atmi. And here you see, it's a displaced people camp. We're not talking about refugees. Those people in this camp are Syrians. And we are talking about 1,500,000 displaced person in this camp. So if you don't want to have another Palestinian issue with the camps in the area and the problems that come and all the problems that come from those camps, a solution has to be found for those displaced people inside Syria and for Syrian refugees in the area, either regionally or in Europe.